Hello there guys, how are you all doing? Welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So today, I feel like it's finally time for me to talk a little bit more candidly about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is the game that no one can stop talking about. Everyone is so excited to be playing right now, and I of course am one of those people. And now that it's been almost 1 week since the Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild finally launched for all of us to play and enjoy, I realized I wanted to really and specifically address you guys and anyone who comes across this video about my true feelings about Breath of the Wild and something very specific about why I'm loving it. So first and foremost, let's get the quick and easy and obvious stuff out of the way. I am so maddeningly and insanely and crazily in love with Breath of the Wild. Obviously, everyone is loving this game, and the reviews are just off the charts. Recent news has been that it now officially holds the record for the most perfect scores as far as scores listed on Metacritic, and that is a very, very big deal. I do believe that its Metacritic score right now at a 98 is still not enough to overall eclipse Ocarina of Time's, but as I understand, it does have more official reviews in the bank, so it's kind of a weird case of what the volume of reviews are and the ratio of perfect to non-perfect scores are. We all know that Ocarina of Time is a classic and a masterpiece and definitely worth all its praise and its scores, but Breath of the Wild seems to be doing a couple things just a little bit more fantastically. So yeah, I'm loving this game just as much as the next person. It really is something so special, and we obviously all had really, really high expectations, some of us probably even too high. And when you consider how well the game is being received right now, we know it's selling like crazy, but that's kind of just the new Zelda rush, and of course the hype of a brand new Nintendo console. But still, when looked at in its own right, there is no doubt that this game has taken all of those expectations that we all had, and just absolutely just decimated them, and it's so impressive. It's just, we really are looking at the best Nintendo that we can possibly see. And I've brought that up before, the kind of Nintendo that kind of threw its gloves in the dirt and said, hey, we're ready to go, we're ready to fight, we're ready to show you exactly who we are. And they also just showed how passionate they can be and what happens when they really have that passion, what their final product really turns out to be. And they've done this several times in the past. You can mark some of the key moments in gaming and some of the key moments in Nintendo's history with some of their biggest and best games, whether it's A Link to the Past, whether it's Super Mario 64, whether it's Super Metroid, Metroid Prime, Mario Galaxy, of course. I mean, there's been several times throughout the course of at least the relevant gaming history, starting with that 8-bit generation up through today, where Nintendo has showed us that they really can make the best kind of product and software out there, and it's something that only a few special companies have, and really Nintendo is the king of that. When it comes to Breath of the Wild, and my own expectations for the game, and even my own history with The Legend of Zelda, which does date back to the original game when it launched, I want to say it was 86 in the United States here, I think 85 in Japan and 86 here, something like that. I was 5-6 years old when my older brother brought the NES home and Legend of Zelda, and I remember the commercials, and it was just the coolest, craziest thing. And so I've been following the gaming industry and Nintendo and the Legend of Zelda franchise this whole time up until today, and played and loved every single game in the franchise. So I just had a specific idea of what I wanted from my next Zelda game coming off of Skyward Sword, which I love to death, by the way. Very underrated, or underappreciated game, I should say. Not underrated, but it's underappreciated today. I love Skyward Sword, and when I thought about the game that was going to come after that, not so much a sequel, but the preceding game, I was very kind of excited for what I thought maybe Nintendo was going to do, and then of course it turned into Breath of the Wild. And all the preview stuff from E3 up until this last week, man, had me so pumped and had me so ready for what this true open world Zelda game was really going to be. And it's just so surprising, really, what Nintendo accomplished here. I mean, I've said this before already online and stuff. This game is so much better than Nintendo even had to make it. To make people excited, to make people satisfied, to move the Zelda series forward, and to make the games, you know, to sell a lot of copies and make the Switch seem interesting. They really didn't have to put as much care and effort into this game as they really did, but they just showed how much they really cared, and I'm so very happy about that. In playing this game now, almost a week later, and realizing how in love with it I am, and comparing it to all sorts of gaming, you know, moments in the past and some of my favorite games that I've ever played in my own gaming history, I started to realize something that I think is really important, and it's that this game, and playing this game this first couple of days now, while it's still really new and really fresh, reminds me of the Ocarina of Time. And more so than just, oh, it's a Zelda game, and it's Link, and it's Zelda, and it's Hyrule, and it's a Master Sword, so it's obviously like Ocarina of Time. It's more than that. It's something a little bit more organic and personal. And it's that this game really emulates that kind of new, exciting, fresh, and just mind-blowing, like tingling excitement kind of experience that Ocarina of Time had when that game was brand new in 1998. The example that I can draw and the comparison that I can make is when the Ocarina of Time came out. Again, 1998 for the Nintendo 64. I was 18 years old. My younger brother, who would have been 15 or so at the time, we were both freaking out over the Ocarina of Time. And it was so exciting just to have a brand new Zelda game, as well as to have the first Zelda that was going to be 3D, and the first Zelda for the Nintendo 64 console, which was the new, hot, exciting thing. And for those of you who don't know, the Nintendo 64 today exists as my all-time favorite console. And of course that wasn't the time at the time, because I didn't know it was my favorite console. It was just a current thing, and I was still a teenager. So the Ocarina of Time, when that game finally released, and any gamer who was lucky enough to be as old as I am, or at least old enough to have played the Ocarina of Time when it was new and relevant, not now, but played it back in the 90s when that game came out, you know how special that game really was, you guys. That game did so much new. And that's something that really counts when you talk about gaming moments in history that were important. And something that, I brought this up in a video a couple of weeks ago too in a different context, but something that really gaming I don't truly think can do now. I feel like most of anything that we could see new in gaming that really blows our minds and something we've never seen, I kind of think that most of that, if not all of it's behind us. I don't really know where gaming could go to start showing us something that groundbreakingly new. And, you have something like the Switch, which does the portable console thing, and that is great, and it is new to a degree, but it's not the same level of new of something that really we couldn't have ever really fathomed beforehand. VR, as critical as I've been of VR, and as much as it's something that really still truly doesn't interest me overall, at least not to plunk down hundreds of dollars worth, I should say, I have to at least be fair to VR and say that to a degree, it does have that feeling. Yes, the concept and the idea and the first, showcasing of VR does go back to the 90s when movies and TV shows and even video games kind of played off the idea of what VR was, so it's not like the concept is new, but the application in gaming and the fact that it's something that is now officially consumer ready, that's new. And so VR does sort of exist in that realm right now. Hopefully they perfect it down the road. But when we think about what the Ocarina of Time did, it was still really, I think, in the very, very end of the era of gaming, having new stuff to show us and changing the way we thought about playing games and developers were making games, changing the way we could interact with and play with our games and what the controller scenario looked like. It was a very, very big deal. Not to mention what it added to just the Zelda lore and just the concept of that series and what Zelda was able to give us. And so when that game came out, and when we first took it home, and I remember the first time I turned that game on and played it myself, and started that game as Link waking up in Kakariko Forest, and then talking to everyone and getting into the Great Deku Tree and all this stuff, and I was like, whoa, this is the most beautiful game. I can't believe what the controls are like. Z-targeting is like the coolest thing. It was such a big deal, just that concept of Z-targeting, and everything was just blowing my mind. Like I said, the graphics, the controls, what the story and the lore felt, how organic that game felt, and how it really felt like I was existing in a real world, a real Hyrule. And then, when you finally beat the Great Deku Tree, and you finally do whatever it is, I can't even remember you have to do to get Homeboy to let you outside of Kokiri Forest, and when you first walk onto Hyrule Field, again, anyone old enough to have played it at this time remembers this, and you step into Hyrule Field, and all of a sudden the game stops, and the camera pans and shows you walking onto the field, and then just pans across the expanse of the entire Hyrule Field. You can see trees in the background, you can see mountains in the distance, you can see Hyrule Castle, Lon Lon Ranch, like as far as the eye could see, at least as far as what we thought that meant in 1998. And what that did to my 18-year-old brain, I can't even imagine kids who were maybe 10, 12, 13 years old at the time, what they went through. And when I saw that and I realized this game is showing me, here's this gigantic world in The Legend of Zelda, the greatest series ever, and you can just now go. You can just play in this world. You got the best graphics you've ever seen, the best music, the coolest controls, Legend of Zelda lore. You're playing as Link in this gigantic freaking field of Hyrule. You just go have fun, buddy. And that was something, that's a pinnacle moment in my life. Like, without question, something that I will always remember as one of the biggest and most important moments in my life, both as a dork and as a gamer, and even just as who I am, because a lot of that defines me today. And it was so cool. And obviously, to kind of wrap this part up, that continued throughout the entirety of the game. I mean, the game just kept getting bigger in scope, the puzzles got better, the dungeons got better, the story got insane, I'm traveling through frickin' time, what the hell is happening? Greatest game ever. Now, of course, that was 1998 in Ocarina of Time, and something that I said is so important that I'll always remember it, and a lot of gamers will. With Breath of the Wild, as I play through this game, and I start to really convince myself, is this the greatest game ever made? Is this the greatest game that I've ever played? Because those don't always have to be the same two things. Is that this game? And is this better than Zelda games I love so much, like the Ocarina of Time, and like the Wind Waker, my favorite Zelda game of all time? And I'm starting to believe that it really probably is, you guys, because of all these incredible things that it does right. As I'm playing this game, as I started this game, as I got myself off the Great Plateau, and as the scope and the scale of this game started to become apparent to me, and this game started to show me what we can do in this new Hyrule and this new Breath of the Wild game that Nintendo has created for us, I started to get the same feelings. I started to get the same level of amazement and just the wow factor of, is this really what this game is doing? Can I really go here, 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 and here at my own pace and as I want to, and really just experience the organic, realness of this world as I play through it? And as I walk in any direction in this game, especially again once you first get off the Great Plateau, once I landed and I realized that I could jump off of the Great Plateau without it having to load, I thought that, and I mentioned this on the podcast this week as well, I thought that going from the Great Plateau to the rest of Hyrule, to Hyrule Field and all these other places, I kind of was like, okay, I know the rest of the game you won't have to load as you go from area to area. That's part of what Nintendo talked about, and that's what really defines an open world game. But I assumed that going from Great Plateau to Hyrule was going to have that sort of thing, like, okay, just going from this area to this area is the one time they're going to have to do it. And that was totally fine for me. I didn't really have any issue with that in my head. I was like, that's just what's going to happen. But that didn't happen. You jump off the Great Plateau and you just keep going. And I was doing that and floating, and I was like, am I really am I going to land? Are my feet going to touch Hyrule Field? And I'll just keep going like nothing happened? And sure as shit, that's what it was. And it was just so cool. And from that moment on, I got the same feeling that the Ocarina of Time gave me. I got the same essence of that feeling, I should say. The spirit of the freshness and the mind-blowing nature of the Ocarina of Time was definitely apparent in my experience starting the first couple of hours and couple of days of Breath of the Wild. Something that I really didn't ever think was going to happen again until, at least not until we get a new Metroid game that feels as important, as excellent as the original Metroid Prime, my all-time favorite game. Not Metroid Prime, that's not a game, and in fact, it's not even a word. Either way, I think you get what I'm trying to say. What Ocarina of Time did so spectacularly in a way that was so special for that time and that era in gaming, and also within that period of Nintendo as a company, everything happening there is what feels like what's happening with Breath of the Wild. And it is important because, as I've talked about in this video and in previous ones about Zelda, we really don't have a lot of new that we can get in gaming. And I have to say that it's been so long that since I've had a feeling like this, that this game has given me, as far as the level of wonder and whimsy and excitement and wow factor, like I said, it almost feels new, because it's been just about since 1998, 19 freaking years ago, since I, and probably a lot of you guys out there as well, have felt a feeling like this. And leave it to Nintendo to make that happen. Leave it to Breath of the Wild to be that game, to really recreate that feeling. And it's tricky because we do live in an era, like I said, where I don't think a whole lot more new can be given to us in the gaming front. And that's not inherently a bad thing, so I don't want anyone to run with that like it's this horrible thing, and oh my god, either A, that would be a bad thing, or B, Rob, you're dumb for thinking that. I really feel like it's something that we pretty much have already just gotten behind us. All this special kind of newness. I don't think we're going to see much of it ever again. And like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing, though. It's just the way it is, and great games can still be, can still come of that, even without that newness. And so with Breath of the Wild, I do feel like there really isn't all that much that's new. I mean, really, there's almost nothing that's new. And that might be hard for some people to think about and to really realize, as we all realize how much we love this game and think about how fantastic it is, and it's the best Zelda ever, maybe the best game ever. But that doesn't mean that there's new stuff happening. Just an open world, just a world so big that you go from place to place and it doesn't load, just the ability to interact with NPCs and do side quests and get involved with this big story, and just like what the combat's like. I mean, there's nothing new in this game. Just because a lot of it's new to The Legend of Zelda doesn't mean it's new for gaming. But that doesn't matter, because what this game is doing is taking all of these different ideas and making them perfect. Making them the best they've ever been. Even the implementation of music, the way it so subtly weaves in and out of the experience based on where you're going and what you're doing, and sometimes it's silent and you just hear nature, which is my favorite. Sometimes you come across like a horse stable or a town or a little camp of enemies, and the music will change organically with the scene. And even that is something Skyrim did 6 years ago, and it was one of my favorite things in Skyrim, and it's one of my favorite things in this game. So you don't have to be new to be amazing, and you don't have to be new to be the best, and I think that that's what Breath of the Wild is. And for the first time in 19 years, like I said, since 1998 with the Ocarina of Time, which is one of my all-time favorite games, not my favorite, but one of my favorite games, this game managed to recapture that. Nintendo managed to find their old selves, kind of. That's really, here at the end of this video, 15, 18 minutes long or whatever it's going to be, is really kind of something that I wanted to get across, I think, is that Nintendo found the Nintendo they used to be, I think, at least in terms of developing a Zelda game. And whereas Ocarina of Time was this huge pinnacle shift that really altered the course of Zelda games to follow for over a decade at that time, I feel like Breath of the Wild is the same thing. I'm going to make another video about Zelda pretty soon, hopefully in the next couple of days, talking about the few things that maybe are a little bit questionable to me that I maybe don't love, as well as discussing some of the things about previous Zelda games and previous staples of the series that I kind of do lament not being in this game and maybe hope come back in future games in different ways. I think that'll be really interesting and fun. I'll be curious to hear what you guys have to say about that at that time. But as far as this, we've got Breath of the Wild. We have a Nintendo that's acting like their old Nintendo from the mid-90s when they were the best they've ever been. And it feels great. And it's just like the Ocarina of Time all over again, something I didn't think anyone, even Nintendo, was ever going to do, and a feeling that I never thought I was ever going to get again in gaming. Except for maybe that Metroid game, like I said. So it feels really fantastic, and it's something special, man. Nintendo, when they really put their minds to it, it really shows that they are unbeatable at what they do. And they are the absolute masters of their craft, and they just make and do the best things when they're on top of it. They make some really dumb business decisions, and they have made so many mistakes. I don't want anyone out there to think, oh, how can you say that? Nintendo's not perfect. They screw up all the time. They do this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. Well, yeah, they do. What do you want me to say? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I'm talking about the Nintendo game software side of that business and that company. Those guys are just the bee's knees, man. They are so great, and Zelda Breath of the Wild has shown it. So that's it, guys. That's really what I wanted to discuss as far as Breath of the Wild so far. I have another video or two about the game, like I said, I do want to make for you guys coming up in the next couple of days, maybe after the weekend probably. But let me know what you think about this. Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time. There are some crazy similarities there. Do you feel that they exist the way I've described them in this video? Obviously, they're similar because, like I said, it's Zelda, it's Hyrule, it's Link, it's all these different things. But what about the spirit of these games? What about the essence of them? What about the character? And just the sensation that they give us as far as gaming experiences and the newness and excitement level of it all. Are they similar the way I've laid out here today? Do you disagree, maybe? Do you think that really it's just another Zelda game and it's just another game, great as it may be? No reason to look at it that kind of sappily, you know, in a sappy nature, but I can't help it, man. That's just how I feel about it. So talk about Breath of the Wild below. Talk about Ocarina of Time, what you guys think about these games and Breath of the Wild and how great it is. And hopefully we're excited for more Switch games from Nintendo soon. I think Mario Odyssey is going to deliver hopefully in the same way as well. So we've got a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to. But man, Nintendo, you kicked ass with Breath of the Wild. Thank you so much for making an incredible, incredible game. And that's it. So thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.